Like all regular people I grew up with in the heartland, JD studied at Yale, had his career funded by Silicon Valley billionaires, and then wrote a bestseller trashing that community. Come on! That's not what middle America is.
He said we shouldn't allow weapons that I used in war to be on America's streets. Well, I wonder, Tim Walz, when were you ever in war? What was this weapon that you carried into war, given that you abandoned your unit right before they went to Iraq, and he has not spent a day in a combat zone? What bothers me about Tim Walz is the stolen valor garbage. Do not pretend to be something that you're not. And if he wants to criticize me for getting an Ivy League education, I'm proud of the fact that my mamaw supported me, that I was able to make something of myself. I'd be ashamed if I was him and I lied about my military service like he did.
So the one question on everybody's mind is, what will a debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance look like? And we had plenty of people speculating about it yesterday, mostly because Tim Walz, during the rally, raised the specter of that debate quite vividly. Watch this.
J.D. Vance literally wrote the foreword for the architect of the Project 2025 agenda. Like all regular people I grew up with in the heartland, JD studied at Yale, had his career funded by Silicon Valley billionaires, and then wrote a bestseller trashing that community. Come on! That's not what middle America is. And I gotta tell you, I can't wait to debate the guy. That is, if he's willing to get off the couch and show up. So, you see what I did there?
It's the see what I did there that's going to require a little bit of explanation, and I'll give it to you. But let's break this down really quickly, because the lies, the obfuscations, the disgusting, despicable slandering of J.D. Vance really requires a response. This guy is such a jerk. Honestly, does this guy remind? He's just like everybody's dad. He's not like my dad. He's not like my dad at all. You know who he reminds me of? He reminds me of the dad or the grandpa who hasn't really thought about politics much his entire life. He knows that his grandchildren or his daughter really is a Democrat. So he starts watching MSNBC, and he just loves that Lawrence O'Donnell guy. And so just to have a relationship and something to talk about his kids with, because he doesn't really care, he's decided to jump on board and be the cool MSNBC dad. Who doesn't really stand for much, actually.
J.D. Vance literally wrote the foreword for the architect of the Project 2025 agenda. Like all regular people I grew up with in the heartland, J.D. studied at Yale.
So now this is interesting. First of all, it's remarkable to me that it's the liberal Democrats who are now degrading an Ivy League education. That's pretty. How many people who work in the Biden-Harris administration have a Yale or Harvard or Columbia degree? But now, if you go to Yale, it's a problem. And also, how insulting to people who grow up in the heartland that they can't get into an Ivy League institution, that they're not smart enough to get into an Ivy League institution, that they can't afford an Ivy League institution. What exactly is he saying with that statement? How disgustingly insulting. That's the word. How disgustingly insulting it is to the very men and women he's supposed to reach out and try to appeal to, by saying that there's something contrary to being from the heartland of America if you went to Yale. Excuse me, I'm curious, Governor Walz, would you say the same thing about West Point and the Naval Academy? Those are elite institutions too. Would someone from the heartland not want to go to those institutions? I'm just curious. Please explain yourself. But there's more lies.
Had his career funded by Silicon Valley billionaires. And then
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I love that. So suddenly we're against Silicon Valley billionaires. You know, the ones who doctor search engines and social media protocols to help Democrats get elected. Now they're the enemy. This guy is such a total fraud. I mean, from top to bottom, the man is a fraud. And we're now not supposed to celebrate somebody who starts a business from scratch with nothing and gets investments if the investments come from Silicon Valley. Okay? Thanks for rewriting the rules for me. I just need to know what the scorecard is so I can play this game.
Wrote a bestseller trashing that community.
Now, that's the biggest lie of all. He wrote a bestseller. Anybody who has read Hillbilly Elegy knows that that was not trashing that community. They're trying to rewrite. You know, Hillbilly Elegy was praised by Morning Joe, by the way, and MSNBC. He was the favorite celebrity guest all year 2016. He was like the expert JD Vance was to please explain to us these rural voters in Appalachia. We don't understand why they're voting for Trump. I don't get it. They loved him. And Ron Howard directed the film version, which is actually very, very true to the book. Glenn Close, I believe, won an Emmy for her performance in that movie, or at the very least got nominated for it. So let me just be clear. Is Tim Walz and the Democrats now saying that this book that was celebrated in the publishing world and turned into a Ron Howard film, that film that Ron Howard made trashes the very community of Appalachia that it's supposed to depict? It's trashing them? Is that what I would love Ron Howard to reply to this, by the way. Hey, Ron, did you know that Tim Walz and the power brokers in the Democrat Party, Kamala Harris, thinks that your film trashed the people of Appalachia? Because I think actually you made a movie that showed them with great care, great respect. So here's what trashing the people in Appalachia is to Tim Walz and Kamala Harris. If you actually shine a light on how the elite globalist Democrat policies of the last 20 years have devastated that community and discarded the people who live there like trash, and thrown them some sort of jobs program saying learn to code while your entire community rusts out, while migration theory takes effect and your brightest, youngest college graduates leave your communities to coastal elite towns to get their degrees and stay there, unlike JD Vance, who actually came back with his degree and built a business in that area. While they have ruined Appalachia and small town America and Rust Belt America by offshoring all of the manufacturing to foreign countries or allowing illegal immigrants to come in and bring down their job market. Now, if you actually tell the story of what happened, you're trashing them. These are horrible people, absolutely horrible people. But then this last remark about debating.
That is if he's willing to get off the couch and show up. So, you see what I did there?
You see what I did there. See, when someone says you see what I did there, it means they've done some kind of pun or offhanded joke or a double entendre. And make no mistake, he did. You see, a reference to a couch in JD Vance is actually dwelling in a complete and total fabricated lie that was perpetrated by a social media user who claimed that there was a reference in Hillbilly Elegy and actually gave the page numbers as the reference, that JD Vance as a child had some sort of weird sexual thing with a sofa, with a couch. I'm sorry, I don't want to get into the details of it. It then got picked up by Kathy Griffin, who made it go viral without ever actually checking the book and the page reference. The whole thing was a lie. It was fabricated. Nothing in the book has any sort of reference in any way whatsoever, but it sort of took off. And everyone knows it's a lie. Everybody knows that it's a lie. Everybody knows it's not a fact. In fact, AP laughingly actually did a fact check with the headline, "No, JD Vance did not have sex with a couch." They actually deleted that fact check because they became a laughing stock. And now here's the man, the kind, decent, normal, Midwestern, rural voice that Kamala Harris has chosen for his temperament and his friendly nature, his Minnesota nice, repeating that lie to waves and gales of laughter and applause. You see what I did there? Yeah. Yeah, Tim, we see exactly what you did there. Oh, we sure saw exactly what you did. We're not going to forget what you did either. You know that whole when they go low, we go high. Yeah. Noted. Duly noted, Mr. Walz. Duly noted. That said, what will this debate look like? Well, let's check in on JD Vance. He did something today that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz haven't done. Kamala Harris hasn't done it since the moment she was hand-selected by a small number of very powerful Democrats and an even smaller number of very wealthy billionaires to be the new nominee for the Democratic Party without one Democrat in America actually casting a vote for her nomination. He actually took questions from reporters, something that those very same reporters would never demand Kamala Harris do. After all, I mean, what questions do we have for her? Oh, who does your hair? Who are you wearing? How excited are you to be a groundbreaking first woman of color president? You must be so excited. How are you even dealing with the excitement? These are the questions she'll get. But let's see what JD Vance had to say.
Sir.
Last night, Governor Walz suggested that because of your Ivy League education and your Silicon backing your political career, that you yourself are part of the elite. What are your first impressions of them trying to frame you this way to the American public?
Well, look, I came from a family where nobody in my family had ever gone to law school. I grew up in a poor family. The fact that Tim Walz wants to turn it into a bad thing, that I actually worked myself through college, through law school, and made something myself, to me, that's the American dream. And if Tim Walz wants to insult it, I think that's frankly pretty bizarre. Now, look, what really bothers me about Tim Walz, it's not even the positions that he's taken, though certainly he has been a far left radical. You know what really bothers me about Tim Walz as a Marine who served his country in uniform? When the United States Marine Corps, when the United States of America asked me to go to Iraq to serve my country, I did it. I did what they asked me to do it, and I did it honorably, and I'm very proud of that service. When Tim Walz was asked by his country to go to Iraq, you know what he did? He dropped out of the Army and allowed his unit to go without him, a fact that he's been criticized for aggressively by a lot of the people that he served with. I think it's shameful to prepare your unit to go to Iraq, to make a promise that you're going to follow through, and then to drop out right before you actually have to go. I also think it's dishonest. Something, again, if you guys ever get an opportunity to ask Tim Walz or Kamala Harris some questions, he made this interesting comment that the Kamala Harris campaign put out there, and I bet they're regretting they put it out there now, because he said that and he was making a point about gun control, he said we shouldn't allow weapons that I used in war to be on America's streets. Well, I wonder, Tim Walz, when were you ever in war? What was this weapon that you carried into war, given that you abandoned your unit right before they went to Iraq, and he has not spent a day in a combat zone? What bothers me about Tim Walz is the stolen valor garbage. Do not pretend to be something that you're not. And if he wants to criticize me for getting an Ivy League education, I'm proud of the fact that my mamaw supported me, that I was able to make something of myself. I'd be ashamed if I was him and I lied about my military service like he did.
So what was that, Tim Walz, about you saying you can't wait to debate JD Vance? We can't wait for you to debate JD Vance. Trust me on this. Oh, he's so normal. He's so moderate, and he's plain spoken, and he's going to really reach out to those rural voters. I wonder how those rural voters are going to react when they learn that after 24 years in the National Guard, as soon as his unit was called up to see real action in Iraq, he decided he was done, and he stepped aside and let his unit go without him, let another man take his place. And then he lies about his record, lies and says that he went to war, and he tells that lie while rationalizing taking away your guns. Oh, you shouldn't be able to have the same gun that I carried in war. You see, he says it that way because he pretends to have some sort of higher moral ground, right? I went to war, so I know better, and you can't criticize my position because I went to war. But you never did go to war. When you had the opportunity to go, you let someone take your place. Yeah, I'd love to see that moment on the debate stage. By the way, I understand what you're thinking right now. Oh, Larry, it's not just going to be J.D. Vance versus Tim Walz on the debate stage. No, you've also got the moderator from the corporate legacy left-wing media. So, it's not going to be even. Well, J.D. Vance is fine with handling the media too. Here's another moment from today's press conference in Detroit, Michigan.
Sir.
Senator Garrett Haake from NBC News. You have repeatedly suggested the only reason Kamala Harris didn't pick Josh Shapiro to be her running mate is because of his Jewish faith. Do you have any evidence to support that assertion that a person who's married to a Jewish man is somehow anti-Semitic or bowing to anti-Semites?
Well, I reject the premise of the question. I did not say that was the only reason that Kamala Harris didn't choose Josh Shapiro. So you should, take a little less DNC talking points when you ask your questions and ask a real question. I have suggested that Kamala Harris was motivated, or at least her party was motivated by anti-Semitism. And the evidence that I offer for that is what dozens of Democratic activists said in the run-up to her selecting her nominee. There were multiple grassroots activists, multiple media personalities, multiple people with influence in the Democrat Party who suggested that she should not choose Josh Shapiro because of his ethnic background. And look, I don't care what your ethnic background is. I know Donald Trump doesn't care what your ethnic background is. I do not want to live in a country where we're choosing who the next VP is based on skin color or ethnic heritage. Choose based on merit. And the fact that so many prominent leaders in the far left felt empowered to talk about Shapiro's ethnic heritage is a disgrace. And I think it's a scandal for the Democrat Party. Yes, I do.
Wow. This is a man who is standing there in Detroit, Michigan, at a microphone, taking questions from all the reporters without any notes in front of him, tangling it up with hostile questions from the reporters, responding in a very clear, articulate, and intelligent way, and holding his own, standing by what he believes, and going after his political opponent. He is so weird, isn't he? I mean, he compared to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, who can and have never done what you just saw in those two clips. He is, in fact, weird. I'm thinking, actually, they're onto something with the weirdness of J.D. Vance. Oh, I can't wait for that debate. I bet you can't wait for that debate. And I know. You're thinking to yourself, Larry, it's not just about how he does going up against Tim Walz. And it's not just about handling the left-wing liberal propaganda corporate moderator from NBC that they choose. No, Larry, what about all the gotcha questions that they're going to set up for him, especially about abortion? Because it's all going to be about abortion. Well, it's a fair point. Let's take a look at the last political debate J.D. Vance engaged in. It wasn't that long ago. It was in 2022 when he was running for Senate, and he was up against Congressman Tim Ryan, which, by the way, I just want to point out, Congressman Ryan from Ohio is actually a centrist moderate. He actually challenged Nancy Pelosi for the gavel in 2021, excuse me, because he knew that his party has gone way too far to the left. He actually does appeal to those very same centrist, moderate, rural voters that we're told Tim Walz will appeal to. Congressman Ryan actually is who they're claiming Tim Walz is. And by the way, J.D. Vance beat him handily in Ohio. So I think J.D. Vance might be able to appeal to those very same centrist, moderate, rural voters a little bit better, even than Mr. Ryan did. But the question came up about abortion and restrictions on abortion. And it came up in this Ohio debate because I don't know if you remember this issue, but after the Dobbs decision, and Ohio did enact under Governor DeWine some wonderfully restrictive abortion laws. And there was the story of a little girl who had been sexually assaulted and impregnated at a young age, something like 10 or 11 years old, and had to go across state lines to get an abortion. Do you remember this? And so this is the gotcha of all gotcha questions for somebody who supports restrictions on abortion. And whether you agree with J.D. Vance's position on this or not, that's irrelevant. What you need to see is how this debate is going to go when Walz and Vance finally are on the stage together. And you have to see how J.D. Vance will handle himself in these situations. So watch what he did in this debate. Yeah, I can't wait for the debate. I cannot wait for this debate. In fact, I am so excited about this debate. Despite Tim Walz getting lots of cheers and making his little joke about J.D. Vance getting off the couch and everyone being so excited about how fiery he is and how plain-spoken he is and how this debate's going to be great, let me tell you something. I rarely make predictions, although I was right about them getting rid of Joe and putting Kamala on the ticket. So sometimes my predictions come true. I don't think Tim Walz is ever going to agree to a debate with J.D. Vance. Ever. I think there's no chance Tim Walz wants to be on the same stage with that man and go head to head. He will be a mental midget compared to J.D. Vance. He will be a bumbling blowhard compared to J.D. Vance. They're all talk right now. There's lots of flexing going on. They are terrified, especially as the afterglow of yesterday's rally starts to burn away. And they actually start seeing how people are reacting to just how radical this political ticket is. This is the most radical, left-wing, borderline socialist political ticket ever presented to the American people in our history. And I have faith that this country is still the country of Ronald Reagan, Dwight Eisenhower, of Abraham Lincoln, of George Washington, and freedom for all.